Well, welcome everybody to today's online GAPLA online talk. For those of you who don't know about us, I'm not sure if there's anybody there, but just in case, we are a non-for-profit association of lawyers from different countries, including Germany, Austria, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands. And we offer a platform of lawyers and law students around those countries to exchange experiences and ideas. And today we're going to be talking about how to requalify as an Australian solicitor in New South Wales. And I would like to very warmly welcome our speaker, Katariina Hatakka, who you can see on video. Katariina has got quite an impressive and interesting academic career. Now, actually, I should ask you, Katariina, I believe you went to high school in Germany, but I might be wrong. So I think there was some Finland experience there too.
I did actually went to high school in Berlin, but it was an international school.
Excellent. So that's where the international flavor starts. So international high school in Berlin. From then you went to study a double degree in the UK. You studied a LLB as well as your Staatsexamen, which was divided between Berlin and London. And after completing that in Berlin and London, you went back to do a Master's of Arts. Specializing in medical ethics and medical law in England, then back to Berlin to do your second state exam, and then you ended up in Australia, where you arrived, I believe, in late 2020, but this is not the first time you've been to Australia. You did a school exchange year a while back. I can't remember the year now, but yeah, so obviously you've studied and worked everywhere. So welcome, Katariina. Thanks for joining us today. And I will hand over to you now to tell us a little bit about how to requalify in Australia. And thankfully you can talk from very recent experience. You've just completed your first assignment and are preparing for your first exam.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, one quick correction. I actually arrived here in late 2019, but yeah, otherwise, that was a nice summary. Thank you. Exactly. So I'm going to talk about how to requalify as an Australian solicitor in New South Wales today. I have to obviously mention that I'm in the middle of it. So Claudia and Juliana and anyone who wants to chip in and add to the actual experience of having finished the whole thing, feel free to do so. So I'm just going to get started. So one very important board that we encounter when we do this whole requalification process is the Legal Profession Admission Board, which determines the eligibility and suitability of people seeking to be admitted as a lawyer in New South Wales. This is obviously especially applicable to those who have a degree overseas or have maybe done different law courses in different degrees, even in Australia. But for us, for our purposes today, we're going to focus on requalifying. So the situation where you have a degree from just another jurisdiction. So the LPAB, which is the shortcut for this board, also grants exemptions for law courses undertaken elsewhere, which is what I just hinted at. So they can actually decide whether people who have a degree either in a civil jurisdiction or a civil law or common law jurisdiction, which courses they will have to undertake to be qualified as a lawyer here. I'll talk about that in a second. And then I just wanted to point out, and that's the path I'm doing currently, is that the board actually offers a diploma in law course, which will also give you the accredit you for the purpose of admitting you as a lawyer. So that has been very helpful for me, but I'll get to that in a few minutes. So just talking about this possibility of getting an exemption for certain courses, the program I'm doing has 20 courses. It might be a bit different for different courses, but out of those 20, for example, they're called the Priestly 11 subjects. They're the core subjects that everyone has to take. That will include administrative law, company law, contracts, equity, which includes trusts, and criminal law, evidence, ethics, and there's a few others. I just want to point out the difference to which background you're coming from. So if you come from a civil law jurisdiction, you will usually not get an exemption for the priestly 11 subjects, so for those core subjects, but you will usually get the exemption for other subjects. And then there is the common law jurisdiction, for which you will usually get more than one exemption for those subjects, for the core subject and also for other subjects. So I'm actually, although I did my German Staatsexamen, I would consider myself a German legal professional. I actually did a lot of my degree in the UK, which means my common law subjects were used to grant me an exemption for 15 subjects out of 20. So I had to do 5.
And I might just chip in there, Katariina, that's a really huge advantage, because for me, who studied law in a civil law country in Germany, I actually had to complete 12 courses. So I think, those 11 subjects, core subjects, and then one additional one, I can't remember which one that was, but it makes a difference. It really does, previously.
Exactly, and that's what I've heard. So I'm very lucky in that respect. I didn't even think of that when I applied, but it does make a difference.
It does, yeah.
I'm just going to move on to the different ways you can actually get to start the process and get admitted as a lawyer. So one way is to actually do your LLB, so do the kind of full bachelor degree in Australia, which is something Juliana did, and I'll ask her to maybe comment on that in a bit when we get to the slide. There's also the possibility, I'm just mentioning it to make the whole presentation very complete. We're not actually going to focus on that, and I have no experience with that. You can also do a Juris Doctor, but that is something you can only do if you have a pre-existing degree, but that will also give you the necessary courses or subjects that will get you admitted, as, I'll give you the requirements to actually start the practical legal training to then get admitted as a lawyer. And then we have the diploma in law, which is what I'm doing, what Claudia, for example, did already. And that's the diploma in law. And I just gave a very vague or very general timeline here. So we have it can just be depending on whether you do it full-time or part-time, it can be a few years to do the LLB. It will usually be at least 3. The Juris Doctor is usually a set 3-year program, but I've seen one for 4 years too. And then you have the diploma in law, which depending on how many courses you have to take, so that would be 1 semester, minimum would be the 4 month. I'm doing a year because I have to do 5 subjects. I'm doing 3 now and 2 next semester. But that can be, if you do the whole program, starting with, so doing the whole program without being qualified in a different jurisdiction, that would take 4 years. So it will usually be something in between. I don't know how long Claudia and Juliana.
I did it in
Claudia.
Yeah, so it wasn't too bad. I got it done in 2 years, thankfully.
Yeah, that's really good. But yeah, you really smashed it. Doing 4 subjects is quite a lot. I'm currently doing 3 and it is a struggle. It's quite a lot.
And I think we also spoke yesterday about it, that there are certain restrictions on how many subjects you can do in a certain term.
Exactly. Officially you can do. Officially you can do. They recommend 2, but you can, without really having to justify it, you can do 3, unless you do the whole program. But for everyone who gets any exemption can start with 3. So that's what I'm doing now. But Claudia doing 4.
There is the might be worthwhile mentioning briefly, there is an opportunity to apply to the Legal Profession Admission Board to take on more subjects if you think that you're capable of managing the workload. So when I was doing, for example, I was doing 4 subjects in one semester, but I was working part-time. So I explained my previous studies and my workload at work, and they allowed me to do more than usual. So if you do want to speed it up, it is possible.
Yeah, that's very good to know. So yeah, and obviously the point of this slide is to show that all these studies, required studies, will actually allow you to start the practical legal training, which is 3 months full-time or 8 months if you do it part-time.
Do you think you could compare that to the Referendariat in Germany, the practical legal training, or do you find it much different apart from the length, of course?
Well, I would say the Referendariat in Germany, it would be the equivalent, as far as I can tell. I haven't done it yet, so just going to point that out. The Referendariat in Germany is 2 years and you can't do less. So it's full-time. I mean, so you work 3 days a week, or 2 or 3 days a week, and then you'd have the other 2 days of studies.
If I could just jump in quickly as someone who's done the Australian practical legal training, we had to do 3 months of full-time College of Law, which was kind of more studies, but things like ethics and so on. And then there was a requirement for, I think it was something like 90 days of work and I did 90 days of work full-time in a firm. So from what I understand of the Referendariat, where you actually, it's 2 years as opposed to the sort of 6 months I managed to do the PLT in. But it's kind of, the work that you do in the firm is kind of like a graduate solicitor anyway.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go into a bit more detail about the practical legal training in a bit. So I'll just skip to the next slide. So I'm doing the diploma in law, and the good thing about it is that it is part-time. So you do, the structure is that it is evening classes and you have regular weekend classes, and you can't do them at any other time of the day. So currently due to COVID, everything's online, so I can structure it the way I want to, but they don't usually offer it online. It is an in-person degree or diploma, and which is different to if you did the LLB, which is what we're getting to in a sec. Then, yeah, so the structure is that you have exams and assignments, so 1 each in each subject. And what was good for me, which is one of the reasons I did it, is because I couldn't get a student loan here yet because I'm still not a permanent resident. So I have to pay up front. So for me, it was good that you pay per course, and it was relatively affordable. And I'm going to give you an overview of the costs towards the end. And the one thing to remember, though, is that the diploma in law does not entitle you to a student visa. So it doesn't actually give you the entitlement to start the student visa here if you don't have another visa, which is why a lot of people who aren't here on a different visa, they have to, it would be preferable to do the LLB. And LLBs, as Juliana maybe can say a few words about.
Sure.
Maybe that's
and as you rightly explained, that was exactly the case for me. So I was looking into the diploma in law because it really is much more affordable than studying with a university in Australia. But yeah, you'd need a visa to be there in person to do those evening or weekend classes. And I mean, we're not going to go into depth what different types of visas are there, even though I believe there are migration agents here with us and could probably explain. And that's why I looked into the LLB, and you can do it full-time, which then will give you a student visa. or you can do it part-time, which I'm not sure would qualify you for a student visa to do it in person in Australia. However, what I did was do it by distance part-time, so I could work, could continue work in Germany. I believe there's only one university in Australia, and luckily it's in New South Wales, because the whole LPAB process concerns New South Wales. That's the University of New England, and you can really do the whole degree remote. And they also got exam centers in Germany where I was able to go. I even sat one exam in Canada. So they're really worldwide, very well connected. Yeah, that was my experience. So back to you, Katariina.
That's very good to know. Yeah, being able to do it remotely would be a big, could be a big convenience depending on your personal situation.
And I believe
so
just a quick little bit also, and Michael could maybe say something on that, because I believe, Michael, you said also reputation-wise, you experienced a bit of a difference between the diploma in law and an LLB, even though I'm not sure that's really a thing then later on once practical work has taken over.
Well, there was just for a starting point, if you come from Germany, diploma sounds a bit like diplom, and which in Germany basically is a bit more than just a normal degree, because you still have to do your diploma by it. So it's actually almost like an honors degree. So I was initially confused, and then I heard a diploma is actually quite less than a degree. And for me, I did two things. I had already completed the first year in the LPAB when I found out about this, and I tried to convert to an LLB course with NSW. And, they were slightly weird and very arrogant about that. So they would have given me exemption on some of my German subjects, but nothing I've done at the LPAB. So that was a bit weird. Wow. So I thought, okay, well, I'll let it go. And instead, I did my master's in parallel. So I said, okay, well, I can still show that I have a master's. I had another issue too, is when I finished, because I got exemptions in all the elective subjects and a few others. I think I got probably the same exemptions that Claudia got or Nele got, much less than what Katariina had. But at my time, they were also not certain what exemptions they would give you. So, for instance, I started doing tax and succession law, and in the middle of doing the course, they actually allowed me to just drop it. Yeah. But in the end, and then I had a discussion because I had to say that they didn't want to give me the diploma, because they said, I didn't do the complete course, so I wouldn't get the diploma. So I had to fight with them a bit, saying, oh, look, if you don't give me the diploma, I have nothing that shows why I'm actually allowed to practice in Australia. So they gave it to me after a while, but it was all quite annoying. But the course
so you were
itself,
one of the early settlers that had to fight hard for the legal diploma.
Yeah, exactly. I think I look, and the problem with this is too, before you actually done the course, it's very hard to say what you should get exemptions for, because you do not know what is the same or what is very similar. I mean, I learned in constitutional law in Australia, that the German constitution is based on the Australian constitution. Well, obviously I didn't know that before, but a lot of that was obviously as a result very familiar. The other thing that I only learned when I did the course was in real property law, that both German and Australian real property law is based on a Hamburg boat registration, ship registration system, and has very similar concepts to this as well. So I wasn't in a position actually to tell anybody, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, or I should get an exemption on this. So I think it was a bit blind. As far as as far as the recognition of the LPAB is concerned, I think, yes, it's probably not an issue once you start working. Nobody cares after that. And I was speaking the other day to, what's his name, Michael Hugh. He's a Silk whose father was on the High Court and at the LPAB. He is a Queen's Counsel and at the LPAB, and he's now currently said his son is doing the LPAB. So I think it is probably not that bad, particularly if you have already overseas legal qualification.
That's good to know. Yeah. No, I just remembered you said that one, so I just wanted to touch up on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Katariina, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I also just remembered one thing that was actually quite interesting. Talking about the exemptions. So, for example, I'm in my current course, I have 2 other girls that I study with, like I have a study group with, and they also have a UK degree, so English degree, and they have to do administrative law, but not law of associations, and I have to do law of associations and not administrative law. So it seems pretty random.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, that's why, you know, all this is an overview. In the end, it is at the discretion of the board. So yeah.
That's for sure. But I think as a civil lawyer, you can definitely count on getting the priestly 11 subjects, and you can look them up online, and
exactly
will be a given for civil law, and then for common law that may be a bit more flexible.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, onto the practical legal training. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly touch on that. So there's a requirement to do 75 days of workplace experience, of which you can actually get, I think it was 60 days recognized as having done, even though you did them before you started the PLT. But yeah, but anyway, in total, you have to have done 75 days in a law firm or in a legal body as a legal professional. And then you have the supervised training, like more the courses, which include, I just have a little list there, lawyer skills, problem solving, trust and office accounting. So very practical courses, as it seems. Sorry.
And sorry.
No, feel free.
I was just going to say about the work experience. I think the only requirement as to when you can start it is you have to have completed a certain amount of courses within the LPAB. If that's the course that you're doing, I think you can only start it when you have about 2 subjects left to graduate. But in your case, for example, or for someone who is already a law graduate from a different country, the start date doesn't matter, because I think for the purpose of the legal training, you're considered a graduate already. So I don't think, I think people like you who are requalifying, they can just start the practical legal training whenever.
Yeah, I think you still have to get an exemption from what I read. So you still have to get in contact with the board. But yeah, and that's what I heard too.
I would strongly recommend that, but because I mean, get an exemption, because as you listed there, Katariina, there are certain subjects, and I mean, if you're worst case, you might only get a couple of subjects, or best case, like in my case, you get all subjects exempted. So I actually didn't have to do anything. I just got the letter saying, okay, you're seen as someone who has finished that, and you can proceed with being admitted.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's important that you point that out. So the LPAB doesn't just give you an exemption for the courses to do before you start your practical legal training. It can also exempt you from any duties that you would usually have to do within the practical legal training. And that's what Juliana got. So that's good to know. And then I just have a quick overview over the costs, just so you understand why the diploma in law in comparison is quite a lot more affordable. This is, so all of these are kind of if you do the full degree, and I just used NSW now as an example because they actually also offer the PLT. So the practical legal training, there's certain unis that offer it, and then there's also this College of Law, which is a separate body that offer the practical legal training. And the cost there, you can see it's just minimal for the practical legal training, but how you actually get there, so whether you do the LLB, the Juris Doctor, or a Diploma in Law, if you just look at the costs, there's a very big difference. But obviously, if you do a Juris Doctor, it might weigh, like it as a reputation, it has a much better, like much more elite reputation than the Diploma in Law. But
are these Australian HECS fees, or are they the fees that foreign students pay?
No, these were Australian fees. Yeah.
Thanks.
So if you're actually a foreign student or international student, it would be a bit more. That's what I thought.
It could be more. I'm not gonna.
I mean,
don't quote me on that. But I definitely looked up if you're an Australian, if you pay domestic fees.
Okay, I think probably Diploma in Law, there's no difference. I would think that was probably just the one fee per course. With the LLB, for sure, you pay more as an international student. However, the exemptions that the LPAB gives you were also recognized by the uni I was studying with. So I only had to do, let's say, a bit more over half the subjects a regular Australian student would do. And also, what was quite nice was usually if you want to study law in Australia, you have to do a double degree, and any Australians may chip in if that's not right, but you have to do a double degree if you just come from high school. So usually you have to do the full 5 years. And what I could do was have a graduate entry, meaning I could only study law, which was already a bit more affordable. Plus I got a couple of exemptions. And then the added bonus of not having to do the PLD. So it may seem a bit more, but maybe in the end it wasn't so much more.
Yeah, this is more like it's good that you point that out. So this is obviously more the maximum that you would pay. Obviously I'm just doing 5 courses for the Diploma in Law, so that will obviously reduce itself by that amount, but good to know that the LLB, it's similar. So if you get some exemptions, then you might not have to do the full course. So but it's just as an overview of the costs. What the reason I'm saying this is because obviously for me, I can't get a student loan. So for me, it was important, which for me, the costs determined what I chose to do.
Yeah, and I'm just looking because Claudia Genutis actually sent a comment to us. And it's the one fee because you cannot be an international student on a student visa for the LPAB. I think that was just what we were talking about. That it's just
that makes sense.
Fee for the LPAB. There's no domestic or international differentiation. And Dolph, who actually practiced in South Africa before and then in New Zealand, also got quite an interesting comment that New Zealand had a special exemption if admitted in. I think Australia had a special exemption if admitted in New Zealand. It was a mere formality to get the Australian admission as a New Zealand lawyer, but he also had 12 years experience as a lawyer in South Africa, which I believe is also a common law jurisdiction. Correct me if I'm wrong. And only write one admission examination. That sounds like a very special little loop via New Zealand for people over
very good. Good to know. Thanks for the tip.
Thank you. So
okay, and then we just wanted to quickly point out that there's obviously also, because if you are doing the practical legal training for that specific course, you can also get a loan called fee help. And because that loan requires you to do a course that lasts less than a year, it's just a bridging course, and it specifically includes courses for overseas qualified professionals, which is, but for that you have to be an Australian citizen and permanent resident, which usually you will be by the time you finish, if you did the LPAB. And this is something Claudia has experience with.
An Australian citizen or a permanent resident?
Sorry, yes.
Yes, but I was quite surprised by that, but because usually for student loans you have to be an Australian citizen and you don't qualify if you're just a permanent resident. But for this specific course, the practical legal training, you are eligible. If you're a permanent resident, you can get this fee help loan, which is a very convenient loan that you, I actually don't know how it is now, but when I applied for it, I think it was interest free, at least at the beginning. And then you just pay it back when you earn a salary that's high enough to pay back your loan. So look into that if you are a permanent resident. But I should say the rules change all the time. It's been a while for me, so have a closer look into that. Good option.
And I believe a permanent resident, and Claudia Genotis, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to have been for 4 years in the country on another visa, and then you can apply for permanent residency. So if you're either, what I guess is an option for many people, if you're on a partner visa or if you're studying, I think after a certain amount of years, you can apply for permanent residency. Claudia, like how many years was it with you? Was it the 4 years or was it shorter?
No, I think it's 2 years.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not, it's just been a while. Claudia Gedutis knows more about that, but that's probably a topic for another day.
Oh yeah, she said depends on the visa you're on, how long is a piece of string. Okay, got it, then we won't go into depth in that here. Thank you, Claudia.
Okay, now I think we can open the floor for any questions. Juliana, just double checking, everybody can unmute themselves, or do we have to unmute?
I will have a look. I think I
unmuted myself.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think I allowed pretty much everybody. Oh, Tatjana must have dropped out, so she's allowed to talk now as well in case she wants to. So everybody could unmute themselves if they have any questions or would like to share experiences. Of course, that's also very interesting if you have any experience in that respect.
Just on the question of LLB versus the grad dip, and this is many, many years ago, but my dad did the grad dip at about the age of 40 odd, and then at 50, he started to try to become a lawyer. And he reported, so we're talking about 1999, that there were times when he went to an interview for a job and the attitude was a little bit like, but you don't actually have a proper law degree. You've only got this LPAB thing. Maybe there's a bit of age discrimination in it as well, but certainly he found that there was a difference. And even myself doing the law degree in the late 90s and early noughties, there was even a sense of not just you have to have a law degree, but at least then there was this sense of, well, if you went to Sydney or New South Wales, then you went to the proper universities. If you went to maybe Macquarie or UTS, that was a second tier, and everything else was another rank below. Whether that's still true now and whether that holds after 5 or 10 years of experience, I don't know. But at least 20 odd years ago, that was, I suppose, how people saw the world.
Yes, and I think, Alexandra, that's a good point that you raised there. But I think in my personal experience, if you are an overseas qualified lawyer, the diploma is just an additional qualification. So take Katariina as an example. I mean, she's got a German law degree, she's got an LLB, she's got a master. So for people like Katariina, and I did the same. I got my German SAT exam, got a master, so did Michael Kobras. It's not really, in my personal experience, it wasn't really questioned because everybody understood I'm already overqualified for the entry positions, and the diploma in law is just a little extra qualification.
Your ticket into the job.
Sorry?
Your ticket into the job, so to speak.
That's right. It's just like the last little bit that you need to.
It really is a bridging course, pretty much. It's something you need to bridge your actual background, like your law degree from a different jurisdiction to Australia.
Yeah, but you're right. I think if you have never done law before and you're coming to the profession fresh, probably better to do an LLB rather than the diploma. But if you're just requalifying, I think the diploma is such a good option that gives you exactly that, the entry into the Australian profession.
I should also point out, because I have been talking about that it's good to get a lot of exemptions. I mean, for me, it's just practically good, but I will actually not get the diploma in law. So I will not actually get the certification in the end. I will just be allowed to be admitted as a lawyer, but you have to do at least 10 courses in that list to actually get the diploma in law, so the actual certificate. So I don't think I care that much because I don't really need another degree for myself.
You have enough.
Yeah, but it could be important for some people. So getting an exemption in 10 courses might not necessarily be, or in more than 10 courses might not necessarily be in your interest if you actually want to
it may
have the diploma.
Yeah, it may again be important if you rely, for example, on the student visa first, but maybe also if you want to apply after you invested all that money in a full-time degree in Australia to go for a I think it's called a graduate visa or something like that. So after you completed a certain amount of years of full-time study in Australia, you qualify for further visa, which then lets you continue to work and leads to the path of permanent residency. And Claudia, you notice again, I'm dabbling here in your piece of expertise. So I think that may be important for for people who use that as the main entryway visa-wise.
Can I say something? Can I say something too on the point of the value of the degree? I'm also an employer, and for beginners, it most certainly makes a difference for me from what university they went to. I obviously am a bit biased in respect of the admission board. But for instance, my experiences with particularly Western Sydney and to a lesser degree with Macquarie are most certainly bad. And if I would employ somebody with a decent employment history, I wouldn't care. So if somebody, let's say, worked for 5 years in the field that I'm looking for, I would not even looking at what degree he has or what marks they passed, or I wouldn't care about that. But for a beginner, Western Sydney and Macquarie would most certainly be a huge minus.
That's
Got a question for you guys. Oh, sorry.
Oh, very good. No, you go.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. It's a different question, so if you wanted to comment on this further, I'm happy to give you the floor.
You're the perfect person to speak, Anna, because I was just thinking of you, because you're actually based in Melbourne and Victoria, and we're speaking only about New South Wales here. So
yeah,
sure
actually, my question was targeted as at that as well. Like, I was wondering what made you go for the New South Wales qualification. Was it just because you were based in Sydney anyway, or was it like a point of crazy comparing all the admission stuff and all the admissions rules? And I can, like, if you're interested, I can also talk from my very recent experience, because I got the letter from the Victorian Admissions Board last week asking me to do all Priestley 11 plus a PLT, which I was quite upset about, because I have 2 state examinations, about to have a master's degree, and I also worked as a fully qualified lawyer in Germany for 1.5 years. And they wouldn't back down on those qualifications. Like, they just don't care how much experience you got. As long as you don't have it in Australia, they make you gonna do extra courses.
If it makes you feel better,
Yes.
I have been no better off in New South Wales.
Yeah, I think so.
That's a bit
that's
of
exactly
a
what
relief.
Claudia
I
did,
didn't just like sink costs into the Victorian board.
No, I mean,
No,
that seems
Katariina,
about the same then.
Yeah, if you want, I can quickly take the first part of the question, because we actually spoke about it in our prep call yesterday as well, that Katariina had a quick look around, looking at other states as well. But for her, it wasn't that relevant. The thing, I was actually looking at other states, because I thought, oh, if there is something where I could get it maybe easier, quickly done than New South Wales, happy to do so. The thing was, and would be quite interesting to hear from you how you did it, because when I looked into it almost 10 years ago, there was just no information on how to requalify as a foreign lawyer in any of the other states. New South Wales was really the only one where the LPAB had a website you could get the information from. You actually had a pathway into it, and that's why. Please explain how you did it.
Yeah, well, I started out here in Victoria just because I'm Melbourne based. And then actually while preparing the application, it came to me that I should probably have a look at other Australian state jurisdictions as well. And I really only considered New South Wales because I heard about the University of New England, and I thought, oh, it might be just easier to go for the New South Wales board and then do the courses at the UNE as well. What I found is the application process itself was quite easygoing with the Victorian board. It's all online, whereas I think in New South Wales, you need to submit like certified copies and all that stuff via post, if I'm right. At least that's what I saw, but I might be wrong on that point. So please correct me at any time.
Could I just quickly ask you, did you do the LLB then?
No, I haven't done an LLB yet. So I did Staatsexamen, both Staatsexamen in Germany. Yeah. And I came to Australia doing a master's degree, which I'm about to finish. And yeah, and I am. So I just applied to with the admissions board to see how many courses I would need to do. And I'm currently looking at different universities and asking for options that they have. I'm currently studying at Monash, and they actually told me that I couldn't do the LLB with them because they wouldn't allow graduates who have studied more than 2 years in a tertiary degree. They wouldn't allow them to study an LLB, not even with a graduate entry. So I would just do, yeah, I was surprised at that too.
Yeah, I mean, but that supports the whole thing that we had in our prep call, that we had the impression New South Wales was just a bit more used to the whole foreign lawyers coming there and trying to get their degrees done. I mean, Michael started quite early in the 90s, so ever since then, I guess the numbers didn't go down. So it may change, but maybe they just don't have so many people going there and doing that. What do you try to do?
Well, it depends, because on the other hand, Monash also offers a law diploma. And then the La Trobe University, which is also in Melbourne, for example, doesn't offer single unit courses, but does offer an LLB. So you really you really have to go through every single course and like uni and actually talk to them and ask them like, what do you offer? What can I do with you, and what can I not do with you? So
and that's exactly
at the moment
the thing, because I mean, I was looking into the distance unis, and there are only 2 that I found that were really distant. So and there was one in Darwin, and the other one that you mentioned, the University of New England, and the one in Darwin actually didn't offer all the courses that the LPAB wanted me to do. So UNE, I guess, definitely banked on that, and they were also happy to accept all the exemptions that the LPAB gave me. So it was really quite straightforward.
What made you study a full LLB, or any of you, instead of just single course units to tick off basically what you need to do, what Katariina is basically doing with her course?
Well, I didn't do a full LLB per se, because I only did the subjects that the LPAB wanted me to do, but because the university accepted all the exemptions that I got from the LPAB, which was the electives and a couple of other subjects, I only had to do the ones that I needed in any case for the admission. And then you get the full degree automatically. So I didn't do anything more than I would have had to do with the LPAB as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I hope so. And the thing is, what you said with your work experience, I believe maybe 1.5 years is not quite enough to justify a PLT exemption. I mean, I had almost 10 years experience when I applied for it, and I have worked a lot with Australian clients, Australian investments, and I really wrote quite an essay about what I have done, and luckily my 2 former bosses signed off on it, and I wasn't asked to do anything for the PLT. So I think it probably depends on how much work experience you have and how relevant or how focused on Australia it was.
I got an exemption on the strength of 3 days work experience in Australia.
So you're busting my theory.
No. I got an exemption. If I'm honest, I got my exemption by way of blackmail. So I let
We're
the law
recording.
society.
We're recording, Michael.
Are you sure you want to share that? But then it's probably it's probably
it might be helpful for others, because I did it such a long time ago. At that time, there was no foreign recognized lawyer in New South Wales. I'm the first foreign recognized lawyer. When I came to Australia, I approached the Law Society to find out what the requirements were for me to work as a German law consultant here. And at that time, the Law Society had no say in that whatsoever. So anybody could come to Australia and advise on law as long as it wasn't Australian law. There was absolutely no limitations whatsoever. Nevertheless, the Law Society told me that I need to be a recognized foreign lawyer, that I have to provide an undertaking not to practice Australian law, and that I had to maintain my insurance in Germany. And because there was actually no such thing as a foreign recognized lawyer, they told me, okay, they will send me, they will recognize me, they will basically bring it before the next board meeting that come back. And it took them 2 years until I got actually admitted as a foreign recognized lawyer. This was in November 94, and in December 94, I was admitted as a solicitor. So, entirely pointless. And when I spoke to them about this, then somebody admitted to them that they had absolutely no right to do that. And I said, look, I could have worked for 2 years in Australia, but because you told me that I shouldn't, I lost obviously 2 years income and also the ability to apply for exemption from the PLT because I didn't have the experience because you gave me the wrong advice. And when I told them about 2 years of income, they immediately offered to support an application for an exemption from PLT, which was then immediately granted.
Well
and
done.
I had, as I said, at the time of this application, I had exactly 3 days of Australian work experience. But
Wow.
But what I found shocking as a German, I find it absolutely astonishing that the Law Society would give you advice on something which is so obviously wrong and not without obviously adverse results. And when I had the discussion with this guy, I actually looked at my letter again and said, look, maybe my English when I got this wasn't good enough to read between the lines that they said this is what they propose as opposed to this is what the fact is. But no, they actually said I'm not allowed to work, and it was simply not true. Yeah, and I was maybe a bit naive, but I wouldn't think that, I wouldn't expect it. Let's say in Munich, if I would go to the Rechtsanwaltskammer, I'm sure they would never say anything like that. Yeah, and if for nothing else, because they're too risk adverse, But anyway, that's why I didn't do a PLT. But
I think the 90s were a very different time in Australia, I have the impression.
So it was there was a lot of, but I have to say, with all, I mean, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 people in my firm who went through the LPAB, and I know everybody who came after me immediately got the exemptions that were by me when I started not clear. So they all were treated the same way. And for N, I think it's quite clear, yes, everybody needed to do the priestly 11s. And my employees, most of them were exempted from the PLT, but only because they already had worked as German law consultants or Austrian law consultants in our firm for many years during the studies.